if I keep starting over, I'm gonna run out of battery before I run out of storage. Goddamn. Hello, friends and enemies, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I am an author and publishing under the name Rory North. I've been online for a while now, but I just recently started self-publishing, and this is my debut YA dystopian book, Plague Saint. I won't say too much about the book itself because I'm here to talk about the publishing process and not the book, but I will leave the description and links below if you'd like to check it out. So this is not a guide on how to do self-publishing. This is me just talking about a few points in the process where I either made outright mistakes or just made things way harder on myself than they needed to be. So these are some things you might not come across in your standard self-publishing guides, but they are good things to keep in mind, especially if you're doing formatting and cover making yourself. That's where I had a few pitfalls. All of these points I've kind of broken up into three categories here. The promotion around the book itself to find readers, the actual publishing process, and then the book creation with like formatting and the cover. So I'm gonna start with Indiegogo because I think that was the part of the process that made me the most mad and pretty much lost me the most money. It wasn't huge losses or anything, it was a few sales basically that I lost out on because of this, but I'm mad about it. And I'm not saying not to use Indiegogo. I'm sure you'll see that once I explain more what happened, but I don't know if I'm going to use them, even if I get into a situation where it would make sense for me to go back to them. I don't know, I'm annoyed and I'm petty, but maybe I'll use them again in the future. But what I attempted to do was crowdfund some upfront costs like advertising and buying some merch that I could send out to people who ordered signed paperbacks. So I set up an Indiegogo. I had one set up for Plague Saint, and then I had another one set up for Villain Complex, which is coming out July. This month maybe, depending on when I finish editing this video. So you could pre-order an ebook for $5 or get a signed paperback. I think with shipping that was $15. And the reason I picked Indiegogo over Kickstarter is because Kickstarter, when you set your goal, you have to meet that goal or else you don't get your money. Indiegogo, they have a flexible funding option where even if you don't meet your goal, you can still get the money you did make. And I was like, oh cool, I don't have a huge enough fan base yet to where I think I'm gonna make whatever goal I set. I just want to sell a few copies and get, maybe $50, $100 in upfront funds. So I went with Indiegogo, I set up, I read through all the information in like the payout tab, and there was nothing in there about a minimum. So I thought I would just get whatever money I made regardless, because that was the impression that the flexible funding description gave me. So the Plague Saint campaign ended like a month before the Villain Complex one. I think it made like $50 or $60, but then the next day Indiegogo emailed me and was like, hey, actually we refunded everyone because you didn't meet the minimum. I was like, what minimum? Turns out you have to make $100 in order to get your money at all. So I was mildly annoyed that wasn't like stated very clearly in the setup tab for the campaign. I'm sure it was somewhere in their terms of service. If I'd looked hard enough, I would have found it. But I only had that email to go off of at this point that said you have to make $100 in campaign funds. All right, so I sent out an email to everyone who tried to pre-order Plague Saint and said, hey, if you still want to get a signed copy, even though the campaign got refunded, go to my Villain Complex campaign, pre-order through there, and like send me an email saying you want Plague Saint instead. I think maybe 1 or 2 people of the 4 or 5 actually did that, so I missed out on like those 3 people who either just decided it wasn't worth the effort or maybe never saw my email. So there's that. So I go real hard on the Villain Complex fundraising. I considered buying a few copies myself, but then I looked at their terms of service and that's against their terms of service. So I was like, all right, I don't want to risk it. If they, connect my credit card to me, my shipping, I don't want to deal with that. So I managed though. I managed to get $110 total on Villain Complex. It's the day before it ends. I'm like, cool, I'm at 110. I'm over the $100 threshold. We're good. Except then the next day I get the same email saying you didn't meet the $100 minimum and we refunded everyone. So I email their customer support. I'm like, I had $110. And they're like, oh no, that's after we take our cut. You have to have 100 after we take our cut. And I'm like, why didn't you? So I'm annoyed that they didn't say that in the other email. They made it sound like just the flat, however much money you make on the campaign is where you need to meet the minimum, but apparently not. So I had to email everyone on the Villain Complex campaign and be like, I'm not using this anymore. I'm gonna figure something else out. I ended up setting up a PayHip and just sold signed paperbacks through there. Again, not everyone who applied for the Indiegogo campaign transferred over, so I missed out on a few more sales. But I did still sell like 3 copies of Plague Saint, just upfront signed copies, and I've got a couple purchases on Villain Complex now, like still not as many as I would have had if the Indiegogo had gone through. But yeah, so if you're confident that you can make well over $100, I'm sure Indiegogo's great. Again, I might be in a place in the future where it makes sense to do that. But after setting up my PayHip store, I'm like, I don't know why I wouldn't just do it through PayHip anyway. If I can do my pre-orders there, get the money right away instead of waiting for Indiegogo to let the funds go. So yeah, I probably won't use them again. I'll probably just stick to PayHip or, you know, setting up my own store at some point. So if you are going to crowdfund your book release, just keep that in mind. The other stuff revolving, you know, pre-release promotion and getting people to know the book's coming out. Set up a newsletter. I started setting up a newsletter like almost a year ago and then gave up on it because I couldn't figure out their drag and drop. But it was really easy. I just needed to spend like one more minute trying to use it. And then I also stopped using it because I was getting messages from them that I couldn't use my Gmail. I had to get my own domain email. I was like, well, I'm not going to pay for that right now, so I'll come back to it once I can afford a domain email. But it turns out that's not true. If you have under 5,000 people on your list, you're okay to use an email. It might make it more likely to go to spam, but as long as you're only adding your actual readers to your list and they're people who actually want your newsletter, you should be fine. So far, I've sent out 2 newsletters and it seems to be working great. So I used MailerLite, set up my newsletter. My mistake was I really should have done it sooner and gotten more people on my list. Then I could have already had people to be sending that information about the pre-orders to. But yeah, set up a newsletter as soon as possible. Even if you don't really have readers yet, you want to have somewhere to direct them as soon as people start showing interest in your book, saying, what is this? Where can I read it? Just direct them to your newsletter, and that's where they can find out when it's coming out. I should have started a newsletter back when I was still active on Wattpad. I'm sure that would have been super helpful for keeping and maintaining that reader base and getting them to transfer. So yeah, if you are getting ready to publish, the best time to set up your newsletter is as soon as possible. Alright, the last thing around promo and stuff is do ARCs. I wish I had done ARCs with Plague Saint, but I kind of set up a tight deadline for myself and I was really rushing to get everything else ready in terms of formatting, so I didn't get around to sending out ARCs for it. I am doing ARCs for Villain Complex. Hopefully that translates into at least a few reviews at release. And if you don't know what an ARC is, it's an advanced reader copy. Basically, you just send some free copies to people before the book comes out so that they have time to read it, and on release day, if they're interested, they can go and leave reviews. It's pretty standard in the publishing industry. The big publishers have been doing it for a while. I think they often will send out physical copies, but you can do ebooks. There are websites, I think like BookFunnel and NetGalley, where they handle the ARC distribution for you. I'm just emailing ARCs to people because it's easier and I don't have to pay a website or set up another account. So I just set up a Google form, have people who are interested fill it out, and then I'm sending them the copies. So I'm sure there's other people out there who have more and better information on how to do ARCs, but if you have the time, it's a great way to get some reviews on release. So we're going to move on to sort of the publication process here. So for Plague Saint, I uploaded it to Amazon KDP myself. That's probably where you're going to have the most sales, and if you want the maximum amount of profit, you want to be the one to be posting it to Amazon. If you go to a Draft2Digital or Ingram and they send it to Amazon for you, they're going to take a significant cut of that. So yeah, I went to Amazon myself, directly uploaded the paperback and ebook to them. And then to get there's a ton of places where you can send your ebook and paperback. It's way too much to do it all by yourself unless you have like crazy amounts of time to kill. And then also if you want bookstores and libraries to be able to order your book, you kind of have to go through one of those distributors. So for the ebook, I did Draft2Digital, and then for the paperback, I did Ingram Spark. And then one of the other places where I went myself to put the book was Google Play, because so basically Google Play changed their rules where authors have to make the accounts themselves. Draft2Digital can't just send author books over. So if you want your books in the Google Play bookstore, you'll have to go set up a Google Play account yourself. It's pretty easy to set up an author account and just upload your ebook. However, you'll want to make sure you do that kind of early, because for your first book, it takes like a week for them to process and verify your account. I wasn't expecting that. It was like a few days before Plague Saint was going to release, and I was like, oh, I should throw it on Google Play. And unlike Amazon, which takes like a day or two, yeah, it just takes them a while to get everything squared away, so make sure you do that early. For me, it wasn't a big deal. It just went live on Google Play later, but yeah, that's something to keep in mind if you want to go there. And also keep in mind that Draft2Digital won't send your book there. You'll have to do it yourself. The next issue I ran into that gave me like 5 heart attacks was I had already posted some books on Kindle under a pen name a while ago. So I had a KDP account for this pen name, and then I went and I made a new KDP account for my Rory North name. And then I found out you're not supposed to do that, and if Amazon finds out you have multiple KDP accounts, they will just ban you for life from the platform. But they will let you, if you go to them first and say, hey, I have multiple accounts, they'll merge those accounts for you. So I went and did that like ASAP, because I was terrified. Yeah, what you're supposed to do is just make one KDP account and you can publish books under multiple pen names. So just a heads up, if you were gonna post books under different names, only make one account. Merging it it wasn't a huge hassle, but it did take a couple days. I had to fill out a form on their customer service page, and then that person told me I had to fill out a different form to get them to call me, and then they called me and I had to give them all my information over the phone, and then like after 24 hours of processing, the 2 accounts were merged. So yeah, keep that in mind if you're using KDP with multiple pen names. And then the last issue I had, this is an issue you will probably only run into if you have your books on Wattpad in the past. So I had Plague Saint on Wattpad again since 2019. The problem is where I was running into issues. Let me back up. So Goodreads doesn't do this anymore, but for a long time, anyone could go on Goodreads and put books from Wattpad on Goodreads so that they could like rate and review them and add them to lists there. And if you had a book on Wattpad that got added to Goodreads, you can go to Goodreads and ask them to remove it, and they will. And they also like don't count those books anymore for being able to be added to Goodreads. It has to actually be published. So when I set up my Goodreads account to make my author account, I went and I searched up my books. Villain Complex was already on there, and then Plague Saint was also on there, which I was fine with. They both had like a couple of stars attached, like Plague Saint someone had 5-starred it, and I was like, oh, that'd be great to have when I publish. I already have like 5 stars on there, that'll be cool. The issue is, and this is a problem even most Wattpad writers probably won't have. When I first started writing on Wattpad, I was using my real full legal name, and then at some point after publishing Plague Saint, I decided to switch to a pen name. So I changed my covers to have my pen name, I changed my Wattpad username, and everything to be my pen name. The problem is, whoever took Plague Saint and put it on Goodreads did it before I changed my name, so the version of Plague Saint on Goodreads had, first of all, my first cover, which was not great. It wasn't the worst thing I've ever drawn, but it was not amazing. And then it had my full legal name attached to the book and attached on the cover. So the thing about Goodreads is you can claim your author profile, but you have to show them that you're the author, obviously. There's a couple of options. You can attach your website, I don't remember everything I did, but it was really easy to claim my pen name, Rory North, because I have been using it online for years. I can show I've been using it and that I'm the owner. Since my legal name I'm not using anymore and I don't really have an online presence for, I can't claim that name very easily. And then even if I could claim it, I wanted the name on that book changed to Rory North. So I had to go to the Goodreads librarian forum, where usually just posting your issue there, they'll solve it there for you. But because my issue was more complicated, they were able to like merge the editions, but my legal name was still attached, and I was like, I want my legal name off your website, and the guy in the forums was like, I can't do that, you'll have to contact the librarians through email and fill out like an exception form or something. So I did that. They got back to me pretty quickly and it ended up getting resolved, and I was able to change that first edition to Rory North. But it was a huge hassle, and for like 3 days straight I was stressing about that. So if you have your books on Wattpad, they might already be on Goodreads depending on how long you've been there. And if you change names at any point, you may have to contact the librarians and ask them to change that for you. Yeah, I'm not sure there's anything I really could have done to avoid that ahead of time. So I don't know if it's so much as a mistake I made as much as like just a complication that most people might not realize can happen. But yeah, I thought I'd throw that in there. Oh, one other thing in the publication process. This is something I just found out about. Amazon has a website called ACX where authors can basically get audiobooks produced for their books. I don't think I'm ever going to use it. I do want to do audiobooks at some point, but I don't think I'm necessarily going to go through ACX. But regardless of whether you're going to or you're even planning on making audiobooks, you need to make an account on ACX and claim your books, because if you don't, someone else might claim them and then they can make audiobooks and make money off your books. I don't know if Amazon is working on a way to prevent that. Last I heard, anyone can just claim your books and then you have to fight them to get the rights for that back to you. So yeah, just make an ACX account and claim your books as you publish them. You don't have to do anything with it. You probably won't run into any problems with it, depending on how big you are as an author, but better safe than sorry. So alright, the last department that I was struggling with was the actual book production. I've been drawing my own covers, or at least making them with Photoshop manipulation, pretty much as long as I've been writing. I've never asked anyone else to make a cover for me. I'm lucky that I've spent many years drawing and learning art and working on that, so that's something I can do. That being said, I don't have a lot of background in like graphic design, file formats, color profiles. That's not super familiar territory for me. So when you go to get the cover template from Amazon for your book, they will tell you that you need to upload the cover as a PDF and that it needs to be CMYK. So there's RGB and there's CMYK. I believe they want it to be CMYK, but most art programs work in RGB. So I jumped through a bunch of hoops trying to convert it. At the end of the day, it doesn't actually matter because the color profile isn't really embedded in the file. But if you're working with CMYK and you convert your file to that, you'll have a better idea of what it will look like printed. So my cover, I ended up having to order a bunch of different proofs because I kept just not being happy with how it was coming out. And at the end of the day, you can mess with the color profile and all that, but what's really going to save you if you're doing your own cover is to just saturate the hell out of it. Make sure your colors are popping, because basically what Amazon does when it prints it is it's going to be a little desaturated. So I think this is my first proof from Amazon. The other mistake I also made on my first printing was doing the matte cover. I highly recommend going with glossy. I think most people like it better. It will help your colors a little bit, and I also feel like it just feels better. But yeah, so this is the first cover compared to the final. It's kind of a lot grayer, less saturated, and yeah, I don't love the texture on the mattes. So I went back, I kind of messed around with the file colors a little bit, and then I believe this one was printed through, I think, Lulu Books. These are both off the same original file I made. They're both, the Lulu Books one was a little more saturated and did look a little more like the original file color-wise. I think Amazon is probably the only place that's gonna desaturate that. So yeah, this one I also did matte, but I think it looks a little better. It still needs to have some higher contrast, but the color is a little closer to what I envisioned. This one was almost kind of, and I don't think it's going to show up on camera super great, but the gold background had almost taken on a greenish tint, as opposed to this one, which does actually look like that bronze gold color. So I took that same cover file, I think I upped the contrast a little bit, and then I just sent it to Amazon again. It looks a little better, it's still desaturated and still has that kind of greenish tint, so I ended up shifting the colors a little bit to make them redder, and then saturating it more. And we got the final result. It pops a lot more, there's more contrast, you can actually see the snow in the background. I think this is the final proof, and then, yeah, the final copy is the same. The other issue I ran into with formatting was on the inside. So I should have done some more research on this. You can find information online. But I basically just formatted my book, and I looked into like the margins and the spacing and the font size, but I didn't actually think about the font all that much. So if you're like me, when you think about like what the default font for printing and stuff is, you might think Times New Roman. That's what I had in my head. It was the default font on word processors when I was growing up. That's not the case anymore. No one really actually uses Times New Roman. I googled it and ran into a bunch of people saying that it's an ugly font. I was not aware of this, but yeah, most big publishers don't actually use Times New Roman. They use similar looking fonts, but the key difference is that they are less condensed. Times New Roman was meant for newspapers where they had to save space. So, I should have grabbed some other books to compare. So what I have this final printed copy. I was comparing it to other books, and I think most people at a glance won't be able to tell the difference if you've used Times New Roman, unless they're sensitive to like font being condensed and having a hard time reading that, which obviously I don't want. I want to make my book as readable as possible. So if you still can change it and you've used Times New Roman, I would advise not doing that. I also saw some mixed information on copyright. Some people are saying that you can't use Times New Roman at all and that you could get sued. Other people are saying that's not true, but if you want to play it safe, that's just another reason not to use it. So I think it still is, I don't even know if this is going to show up. I don't think at a glance anyone's going to think this is any different than any other printed book, but it could cause problems if you're like reading for an extended period of time and it's a little more condensed than what you're used to. So what I'm switching to is Adobe Garamond. Garamond is recommended as one of the most popular fonts. The thing is, the default Garamond, I don't know about other word processors, but the default Garamond font is a little goofy, especially when it comes to italics, so I recommend getting the Adobe Garamond font. You can download it and put it in your word processor for free, at least for Microsoft Word. I don't know how easy it is to install elsewhere, but you can use it for whatever you want. It says on their website that you're good to go. But yeah, that's also something to keep in mind. Not all fonts are the same, and you should probably look into fonts a bit more than I did before you just slap your book together. Quick update. It actually occurred to me that if I'm going to be publishing the next books in the Plague Saint trilogy in the next few years, ideally, and I do a different font for those, it will bother me so bad. I need them all to match, so may as well just get it out of the way. So I am going to make an updated version. The one thing I don't know yet is if the sites that are currently selling my paperback will let me easily upload a version that's longer. hopefully it won't be an issue. Hopefully the hardest part will be redoing the cover, because I'll have to change the dimensions on that. But yeah, I realized I may as well just fix that now if I'm going to have different fonts in the future books. Yeah, so that's something to think about, especially if you're starting a series, but with any books. Be very careful with your font choices. Okay, sorry, one more thing actually. Something I should have done on the ebook as well, that I'm also going to go back and change in Plague Saint, is dividing or like making sections for the chapters in the EPUB file. Again, it's one of those things that's not like 100% necessary, but if anyone reading your book wants to like jump back to a certain chapter or see where they are, it'll make things a lot easier. So and again, it's something you can do in Calibre, which is free. I don't know how easy it is to do in other, I assume it's about as easy as any program. But yeah, I went into the EPUB file for Villain Complex and like just made each chapter a section you can jump to in any EPUB reading app. And then I'm going to go do the same thing to Plague Saint when I get around to that. Hopefully sometime this month, along with the new font files that will be going up. Still have to make that. Anyway, yeah, just one more thing you can do to make the reading experience better is, yeah, convert your EPUB, make those chapter headings. And if you don't know how to do that, I'm sure there's plenty of free tutorials. I just Googled it and figured it out. It was a little bit tedious, but not hard at all, so yay. A lot of people say that you can like pay for formatting and like pay to get formatting done. I don't think you really need to go super fancy. If you struggle with like figuring out how margins work and getting page numbers in the right place, and you can afford to get someone else to do that for you, that's great. But really all you need to do is change the page size to whatever your book's going to be, adjust the margins to fit Amazon's template, and then I think the thing that was biggest pain in the ass was dividing just the text of the book into like its own section, so I could make sure the page numbers only went in that section. Yeah, formatting the book so that it's presentable is, you really don't need to do anything fancy. For my chapter titles, I kind of just picked a different font and made them bigger. I stuck in, a title page, and then copyright dedication. Oh, that's actually the other minor thing I did that I wish I changed. And technically I can still make changes to the Plague Saint manuscript. It's just kind of a pain to re-upload and resubmit it to the like 5 different places I'd have to change it. But so I drew this cover myself, so it didn't occur to me to like give credit to the artist because it's me, and it's not common it's still not really standard for publishers to put the name of the cover artist in the books, but I think a lot of indie authors who commission cover art have started doing that. So I probably will in future books going forward mention that the cover is also by me, just because that's kind of becoming a bit more standard. So if you want to put in a note about who did your cover, that's also something you can do. And then the last thing that caused me a bit of a headache was ISBNs. So if you're publishing to Amazon, pretty much anywhere you can self-publish, they will give you your own ISBN. And the thing with ebooks is that's great. Amazon will give you an ISBN that works on their website, and then you go to Draft2Digital. So the real issue is that Draft2Digital with ebooks, you can pick and choose where you want to send your ebook. So if you're doing the ebook yourself on Amazon, then you go to Draft2Digital to send it everywhere else. You can uncheck Amazon and say, don't put it there, I already put it there, just send it everywhere else. You can't do that with paperbacks for whatever reason. Both Draft2Digital's print side of their site and Ingram Spark, it's all or nothing. So if you've uploaded your print book yourself on Amazon, which I do recommend doing, and then you go to Draft2Digital or Ingram and have them send your print book everywhere, you're gonna end up with 2 listings for your book on Amazon with different ISBNs. My understanding is that that's okay, and that I think Amazon will prioritize the one that you uploaded yourself, but there is still that chance that people could buy the other version and then Ingram is taking a cut that you don't need them to take. So if you can afford it, and ISBNs up front are kind of expensive, I don't remember if you can buy a single ISBN, hang on. So this information is for the United States because that's where I live. Different countries have different companies that sell ISBNs. If you're in the United States, you have to go through Bowker. I think that's how it's pronounced. B-O-W-K-E-R. And you have to buy your ISBNs from them. So the benefit of buying an ISBN is that you give your book to Amazon, you give them the ISBN, and then when you go to Ingram Spark, you give them that same ISBN, and then when they try to send the paperback to Amazon, Amazon will say, oh, we already have that book, and they won't add a new listing. I think you have to give it to Amazon first, because Ingram Spark will just bounce off Amazon, but if Ingram already has your ISBN and you try to upload on Amazon too, they'll reject it because it's already being used. So yeah, but if you do want to do that both ways and make sure there's only your version of the paperback on Amazon, you do have to buy ISBNs. Again, it's not necessary to buy them just for self-publishing, and you can just let there be the 2 listings. But I decided to go ahead and buy ISBNs. The problem is I learned all this information after I had already put the paperback on Amazon, and you can't change the ISBN once you've created that listing. So I had to archive and unlist that version of Plague Saint and then create a new paperback listing and re-upload and re-put all my info in. So that was kind of a pain, but now I've got just the one Amazon listing with my ISBN. Yeah, so if you buy just one ISBN, it's $125. But if you buy 10 ISBNs, they're only about $30 each, so you're paying like $300 for 10. Since I already know I'm publishing at least that many books, I just went ahead and bought 10. I think you can also buy 100 for, yeah, you can buy 100 for $600 or 1,000 for $1,500. I think the 1,000 only makes sense if you're a publisher, but if you're confident you're gonna sell 100 books, or write 100 books, you could also buy 100 ISBNs up front. Again, really, it's only something you should do for paperbacks. You could also get ISBNs for your ebooks if you want that to be consistent everywhere, but I don't think it's necessary or super helpful, especially if you're in the early stages of self-publishing. So yeah, and that is important to note. If you're doing paperback and hardcover, you need separate ISBNs for each one. And then you would need, hypothetically, a separate one for your ebook. So I think that's everything I messed up on during my first self-publishing process. Villain Complex is going a lot smoother now that I know all of this. That'll be out July 11th. But yeah, I think the biggest thing you can do is try to hype your book up beforehand if you can. The main way I did that was the signed copies, so I just listed those on my PayHip, and then when the book came out, I ordered copies for myself and then shipped them out to people. I have a separate video I'm also going to throw up that just kind of shows my process of making those signed paperbacks and selling them, and then the little goodies I included. So I think I'll record that right now. Yeah, if you have any questions about the self-publishing process, I'm happy to answer them. Like I said, there's other people who have way better guides and how-tos if you don't know anything. But if you already kind of know what's going on and you just want to avoid the pitfalls I made, that's what I'm here for, I guess. I think that's all for now. But yeah, if you're interested in Plague Saint, you should buy Plague Saint. My baby. Plague Saint's funny because it's dystopian, and I'm usually not a huge dystopian fan. I think mainly just because there's not a lot of dystopian books that are, like, fun. I'm working on another future post-apocalyptic book that's kind of lighter and more humorous. And Plague Saint does have some funny bits in it. The second book will have some fun stuff, but for the most part, it's really not like my other books in the sense that I usually have, like, a lot of comedic relief characters and a lot of jokes, and that's just, like, really toned down here in Plague Saint. I kind of abandoned it for a while because I just didn't really care about it at all, but then I went back and reread it at one point and kind of got reinvested. I think it helps that the main character gets to live out my fantasy of just the people in charge who are making life hard for everyone. So yeah, maybe I should just talk about the book a bit. It's future, you know, post-apocalyptic, standard dystopian. There's a bunch of plagues infecting the city, and they have a plague doctor. The main character kills, like, right at the start because she finds out he's corrupt and she's trying to save her mother. So she basically steals his identity and is healing people in the city, and then also trying to get to the bottom of, like, the government conspiracy, and just kind of kills some people along the way because she can. And you can too. I have to cut that off. This book is not meant to encourage committing crimes. Wink. I'm joking. For legal reasons, that's a joke. So we'll see. I don't know. It's my first book. There'll be a sequel at some point. I'm working on it. If you read this book and you want to start reading the sequel, you can join my Patreon. I'm going to be posting... Basically, I'm using Patreon instead of Wattpad now, because I'm taking all my stuff on Wattpad because I don't want it to just be freely available before I publish it anymore. But since it could be a few years before I get around to revising and publishing some of those, I'm basically moving them all over to Patreon, and then everything new I write, I'm just posting there the way I ordinarily would have posted it on Wattpad. Does that make sense? That came out weird and garbled. Thanks for joining me. Hope I was able to help someone with this, or at least entertain you by explaining all of my mistakes. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.